Let's talk about more of these indicators, more of these data metrics that we're about to get later this week. I'm being joined by someone who knows a thing or two about all of this. That's Michael Santo. Michael, good to see you. It's been a while. Let's talk about if we are in a recession already, or are we about to be in a recession? Because we're getting the GDP numbers on Thursday. And if those GDP numbers show negative growth for a second quarter, some economists that I spoke to, that I've heard from, say that means we're already in a recession. What say you?
Yes, that is correct. We would be technically in some sort of recession, but a very odd one based on our experience in the last 60, basically 100 years, in the sense that we don't have very high unemployment, which unofficially is usually considered to be part of a recession too. But by definition, it's the economy shrinking in gross output, which we're probably technically basically fitting within that definition as of now.
Okay, so we heard from Fox 13 in Tampa there in their segment that consumer confidence is down, that new home sales are down. And so we're all very highly anticipating this meeting at the Fed tomorrow. Chairman Jerome Powell says, and it's known he's going to raise interest rates. No one knows, though, by how much. The last time he did it a couple of weeks ago, it was 0.75 points. Do you expect it to be similar or higher than that?
I would, if I had to guess, I'd have to say similar, but we'll know, very, very soon what it is. It is like landing a plane. They talk about soft landing. Now they're saying it's a hard landing. And if the Fed feels that it overshoots, then it'll stop raising rates faster or even start to lower rates. And that may come into play over the next 12 months. But right now, there's a lot of Monday morning quarterback that the Fed is late in the game. They need to catch up because they don't want to have out of control inflation. And even certain corporate results from Walmart and Target, where they're having trouble selling inventory, is suggesting that there are some counter-inflationary forces already starting to appear in our economy, which gives the Fed reason to second-guess raising rates too aggressively.
Okay, Michael, I know we're going to move around a lot here, a lot of factors in the economy, but let's talk about the Biden administration's response to, possible calls that there is a recession on the horizon. President Biden said that's not going to happen. He said it's not inevitable. Also, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen echoing really the same sentiment. So they're quite bullish that, we're not going to be in some type of recessionary period. Are they right, or are they just telling that to their voters?
I think there's a case to be made. Elections are looming, midterm elections are looming, and they look bad for the Democrats. This is historically a midterms that's bad for the incumbent party, incumbent president. But the U.S. economy is very strong. There was unprecedented stimulus, perhaps too much, put into place during the shutdown, which was an unprecedented pandemic. But we are facing a lot of supply chain disruptions that are globally. Some of it is these crazy shutdowns still going on in China. Some of it is even U.S. tariffs. I think we really, really have to reassess. And it's also just rapid changes. I'm afraid this inflation could get a lot better within a year, or it could get a lot worse. There is geopolitics here. And God forbid things start to get much worse with Russia and China. So much stuff. China is such a big part of our supply chain. It could be short-term disastrous, major conflict with China escalating. And I don't think that, unfortunately, is impossible. We haven't had this bad relations with Russia, for example, even though it used to be the evil Soviet Union, since the 1970s. So there's a lot of geopolitical risks. But as far as the U.S. economy being robust and dynamic, I would not underestimate. Both the American consumer and the American corporation is able to rapidly adjust to supply chain issues, because we're dealing with inflationary forces that are coming from supply chain disruptions. And I don't think it's purely an issue of monetary policy or fiscal policy. I don't think it's just too much that the Fed put too much gas into the system, or the Congress put too much gas into the fiscal system. I think that we have major supply chain disruptions, and I think that's going to take time and it's difficult. But if things smooth out, I think the economy will heal itself within the next year or two. But if we have more unexpected shocks and changes, it could actually get uglier.
Okay, Michael, two more topics I want to discuss, and we saw there just some video of some of the very high gas prices we've seen in so many states around the country. Although gas prices are down precipitously, I think since you and I last spoke, from the record high, it was about $5.02 a gallon. It's now, I checked AAA today, $4.32 a gallon. That's the nationwide average. Now, the Biden administration is saying, and they're touting this as an accomplishment, but did they have anything to do with it, or is just demand down because American consumers can't afford high gas prices? What is it?
I mean, that could be part of it, demand destruction, where American consumers just can't afford to drive as much. They can't afford to fly as much. The U.S., by the way, on paper is still basically energy independent when you look at the natural gas and oil we produce. We can invest more in oil and natural gas. I think it's a dicey thing when any president takes credit or we blame any president entirely. And, I think that's always true for every president. Things happen. I think there's a lot of geopolitics. I am worried about geopolitics when you look at Russia, China, Iran, North Korea. And so that, for me, raises a major issue about trying to predict oil prices. Our country is an energy giant, and so is Canada. There's a lot we can do. We should build more nuclear reactors, but that's going to take time. I mean, it's not always politically correct, but nuclear reactors, zero emissions, and we can supply them with the uranium that we need, of course. Oil prices is dicey, geopolitics. But I think that the other shortage that's looming that worries me in the next few years is a lithium crisis. I don't think we have the extraction capacity that we need to build the electric cars that people want to buy, or that Elon Musk in particular wants to sell. And I think that's another looming supply chain crunch is lithium. And a lot of it's coming from China and a lot of the rare earths as well, but particularly lithium. And I think that's another crunch that we're facing. But the U.S. is an oil, natural gas giant. We're very blessed in that regard. And nobody should forget that or think that that's somehow gone away.
Okay. No, that's so interesting. We're going to be talking this hour as well about the semiconductor chip shortage and the legislation pending before the Senate to ramp up domestic production of those. Last point, though, Michael, I want to talk about, that's student loans. Remember, the pause on student loans had been extended to August the 31st. Obviously, that's about up. That's coming to an end very soon. The Department of Education, on background to Fox News, said that amid reports, student loan servicers have been told to hold off on sending billing statements, prompting speculation that August 31st deadline could be extended. They said on background that the DOE will continue to assess the impacts of the pandemic and the economy on student loan borrowers. We will communicate directly with borrowers about the end of the payment pause when a decision is made. So President Biden can extend the pause, or there's a lot of talks before the midterms that he could forgive a chunk of borrowers' student loan debt, possibly upwards of $10,000 per borrower. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I think eventually, technically, President Biden owes the voters to forgive at least $10,000 because he campaigned on that position. Other Democrats, particularly Senator Warren, who's quite a bit further to the left, campaigned on $50,000. So there's certain legal and ethical issues. People who paid off their student loans or worked extra jobs so they wouldn't have student loans feel like they worked hard so they wouldn't have loans. And it's unfair that some people who ended up with loans that maybe they could have done more to avoid have them partly forgiven. President Biden in particular appears to be sympathetic about that. He's afraid that people who went to super expensive colleges, which he thinks is great, but if they're making like $500,000 a year, he sees that as perhaps an unnecessary handout. That's the position that he's basically tends to argue something along those lines. Forgiveness is likely to have income limits. If you're making more than $200,000, they might say that you're going to have forgiven less. There's also, by the way, legal questions about whether the president and the education secretary has that legal power. The Supreme Court is overthrowing a lot of powers, by the way, of the executive branch and agencies to interpret laws. But I was reviewing the laws myself, and I have to say, the law appears to be very sweeping in the sense that there is a phrase that the Secretary of Education has the power to waive any. And, just seeing the words wave any, that does seem sort of sweeping. But, it's a difficult matter. I don't want to sound like I'm dismissing concerns about people who feel like they worked hard so they wouldn't have loans.
Right.
So, I think, but President Biden promised $10,000 in forgiveness. And maybe I'm naive. I feel like if a politician promises something, they're going to owe it to their voters.
All right. Well, we will see. A lot is in store in the next couple of days. Michael Santo, thanks so much. We will talk to you again. Have a good night.
You're welcome. Have a great night.